Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I rank the 1991 football insert cards. This is kind of a fun year for inserts because it was the first year that inserts were actually taken seriously. Prior to 1991, they were basically a one per pack filler. It was really what they were done as. And I would say Fleer is the only company, at least in baseball, that actually took seriously the idea that these should be kind of chase cards that were fairly rare. But in 1991, that concept was taken on by more companies. And so inserts were starting to become their own chase quality of card collecting. And so you get a little bit more variety because card companies were taking the idea of designing these cards a lot more seriously. And in football, it was especially exciting because there really hadn't been much done for the whole insert side of the football market prior to this. And so this was a big explosion for us to discover and see these interesting ideas that were coming out. But there was also a level of professionalism that kind of heightened heading into 1991. So here with this ranking of the football insert designs, this is a pretty fun one. And I don't want to get into inserts that were basically the same as the regular cards in the set. So like Pro Set Platinum, I don't have that in here because those cards are quite literally the same cards as the cards in the main set. They look different, but that's only on an individual image basis. There are actually some cards in the set that are done with the black and white background, so you're not even going to notice that these are inserts until you get to the end and you start putting the numbers together and you discover they have different numbers. That's just boring. I don't need to do that. And Action Packed is kind of a borderline case with this, so I have it as an honorable mention because of the fact that I don't know how to categorize it. This is an insert, but it's also a parallel. In fact, it's more of a parallel than an insert. It's the exact same card as the main card in the set. It's just that, down to the image. It's just that the gold foil is replaced by gold leaf and the card number is different. That's it. So it's obviously a parallel, except it's only a select few players from the card set and the numbers are shifted. So it's not really a parallel either. So it can go either way. But the main reason I want to leave it off this list is because I've already talked at length about how great the main card set design is. And this is basically the same, so it would obviously go up toward the top of the list. I just don't need to rehash that. So I'm acknowledging that this is a great insert card. It was an incredible concept and I love it, but I don't really have the heart to put it in here with these cards that are a lot more original. Starting with the bottom of the pile, which is the Topps 1000-Yard Club cards. And in the case of this set, this is a really good demonstration of how high the whole scale is, because if this is the lowest spot on this totem pole, that actually says a lot about the quality of these sets. But it is the bottom of this totem pole for a very good reason, and that's the fact that it's too busy of a card. Now, 1000-Yard Club cards, they'd always been kind of missing something. They were good, but there was something that just wasn't quite there. And one of the most ironic things about football card design is the fact that the best 1000-Yard Club card was actually the 1990 card, which was one of the base set was one of the worst card designs the Topps had ever made. They made a slight change and suddenly they had a really impressive insert set. And this card is a much better designed card that actually kind of fails, because it's interesting where with the main card set in 1991, they had a very stripped down approach, really good detailing on the border. The card itself was well crafted, but it had a good balance of the card design to the image, and it contrasted the two. In the insert set, no, not that in any stretch of the imagination. Here the problem is it's got great design, but it gets clogged up by the image. The image just kind of runs together with it. It's pretty frustrating to see because, like with Barry Sanders, you can't even see Barry in the card at all. Even in cases where the player does stand out, the player doesn't pop off of the card. He's almost kind of feathered into the rest of the card, and so none of these cards have punch to them. They are nice cards, they're just not distinctive. They really do just run together and kind of disappear. So it's unfortunate. And I do have to acknowledge that This could very easily be at number 9 because the number 9 for me is the Pacific Picks the Pros, which has its own serious issues, which are kind of similar in a way. Now, the cards are distinctive because they have gold foil around the entire border, and it completely overpowers the card. That's the whole thing. And in 1991, if you were lucky enough to know about these cards, and even luckier to discover one in a pack, they definitely stood out. The problem is they got old in a hurry because it's too much gold foil. It's overpowering. And so this is a wow factor in 1991, and it's a blah factor ever after that. And it's too bad because the card design is actually pretty nice. They did do silver cards, and those silver cards look better, but at the end of the day, it's just way, way, way too much foil. And so it disappears. Even though it does a better job of isolating and presenting the player, the information on it, all of that is much better than the Topps card. But the card is its own worst enemy at the same time because the very thing that makes it distinctive is the thing that completely overpowers everything else. But at the end of the day, I put this at 9 because it is more clear and more distinctive at the things that it needs to do. I think it's a pretty good jump, though, up to number 8, which is the Fleer All-Pro cards. And this, the biggest sin that this has is what it's taking over for, or more correctly, what it's failing to take over for. In 1990, Fleer made a great, great All-Pro card. Really, really a wonderful card. I love it. And then they followed it up with this swing and a miss. I mean, this is a total whiff. The problem with this card is the fact that they tried to play a trick. They have kind of a champagne or platinum border, thin border around the outside, and then you have a portrait right in the middle, and it's supposed to showcase the portrait. And it fails to do that because it doesn't have a good balance. Now, in 1993, they would use this same trick, and they would actually make it work because they figured out how to balance the whole card. In this case, they wanted that big shot of the player, the big portrait, to dominate the card, but then they have all that stuff down at the bottom that kind of competes with it, and the selection of the image, it's not well presented. And so what ends up happening is the card just kind of runs together, and it's a nice card, but there's nothing distinctive about any of these. They really do have a problem with that. And it's really ironic because Score, which interestingly in 1991 they didn't have any inserts in football for either Score or for Pinnacle, but in their main set they had a subset called Dream Team where they did amazing, amazing portraits. If they had been inserts, they'd have been among the best inserts ever. Instead, they are absolutely among the best subset designs of all time. Well, this is the complete opposite. This is where it just absolutely did not work in any stretch of the imagination. So again, the cards are nice. They're just not noticeable. So big failure. And I could, again, going from 8 to 7, I could easily swap these because, and for a while I did have it that way because the Upper Deck holograms, this was probably the most difficult for me to figure out what to do with because of the relationship I've always had with this card. So in 1991, these were really, really kind of shocking. Upper Deck had been making holograms since the beginning because that's the thing that Upper Deck did. And in baseball, they always had these logo cards that were really impressive holograms, but they were always one per pack, and so everybody got bored of them. And anytime you would discover them, they're amazing, and then very quickly you get bored of them. In hockey in 1990-91, they had very impressive holograms that had a very small range of workability, but again, there was something they were missing. They weren't quite cards yet. And so here in 1991 football, they finally had a very distinctive hologram that was done as a front and back hologram, and it came through really well. It was well made, it read pretty well, and it did have some 3D effects, but the most distinct thing about this card is the fact that it's got a weird relationship of how the colors come across. And so you have to kind of play with the light, and once you get it right, the colors actually come out very distinctly, very strongly. But the rest of the time, the colors are either way off or there are no colors at all. And on top of that, the card itself it's not well designed. So in 1991, this was amazing. In 1992, it was, it was okay. By 1993, it was more, oh yeah, they did that in 91. And by 1994, it was, wait, what? Oh, okay. it just completely fell out of your mind until you'd run into it and you just kind of go, oh, all right, whatever. You just blow it off because there was no quality to it like you had in 1992. There was no flexibility to how you see it. There's just a narrow space where it really worked. It's kind of boring, but the technology is impressive and I love the card back. So to me, this is better than the All Pro cards, but it's got a long way to go. And then for my next one, I'm going with Pro Set WLAF insert cards. Specifically, this is an NFL Packs. This was a set looking at the upcoming WLAF cards. And these are the same card designs as in the main set. So, they're good, but there's nothing really of distinction about them except the fact that they're WLAF players and coaches. And so some of these are names you know. For the most part, though, they're players you don't know. More specifically, it's teams you don't know. And the WLAF was pretty exciting because the fact that it was the first NFL minor league that we'd encountered. And it was a European league. In part, it was half a European league, half a US league. But still, there was the exotic quality of the locations of some of these teams, as well as, like I said, the minor league quality to it. So it was exciting. But where this set really stood out was they had a whole set of helmet cards. And this gave you the ability, the cards look very distinct, they're really cool, and you got to see the actual logo on the helmet up close. The way that it was designed, I love the way they look, and so that's the reason that I have it on this list. Now, it is the same design, so I don't want to go any further into it, put it any higher, but it was really cool. Next, I'm going to go with Ultra Performances, and this is a card set that this is interesting where it's the same design as the main card in the set, which is that's kind of common with some of these sets. But at least in this case, they changed it where the background now has kind of a whitish effect over it, allowing the player to stand out more. And it allows the card to look professional. It looks kind of formal, which is what the whole card set was supposed to be. And so that means that this is the card that shows you what the rest of the card set should have looked like. This should be the basic card of the set. It's not. So I think I've got it a little bit too high here on this list, but I wanted to have it here because of the fact that it is more distinct than the WLAF cards. And for me, I really do like the fact that it actually succeeds, not perfectly, but it succeeds somewhat successfully in showing off what the rest of the card set was supposed to be and gives you the feeling that, okay, yeah, these are serious cards. But for my next step at number 4, this is, again, same card design as the regular set. I'm going with the Pro Line NFL Spirit cards. And Pro Line was a clothing company that came up with the idea of making a card set that that basically showed off all of their apparel with football players as the models. Cool idea. But they also had an NFL Spirit line, which was geared to women. And so for the models for that, they made a whole insert set of 7 wives of football players. And they're all dressed in, the same thing, but that gives you the ability to see a whole different side of the football players that you've never seen. Prior to this, there really was no at-home side of football players that was ever shown. Nobody did that. You might see some kids shots, but not some downtime shots. And in 1992, they would increase this with the Pro Line Profile set, where you really get into the downtime, the personal life side of players. But here in 1991, they had the Wives set, which gives you the ability to hear their perspective of sitting in the stands during a game, or what the player's like after a hard loss, or what he's like the day before a game. In fact, in 1992, Ronnie Lott's wife was featured on one of the cards, and she was explaining what Ronnie is like the whole day before the game, and you go, yes, that is Ronnie Lott. It's really cool to see this. But that just makes it my favorite insert set of 1991. What really makes it distinct for this list is the fact that the women all look like professional models. They really carry it off. The guys, not so much, but with the women, they really do look great on these cards. They're all classy. There's nothing suggestive, Jennifer Montana aside. And it really has, I love the way they come across. And all 7 of these cards look so different from what you see in the main set. So to me, there's no way that this doesn't fit as one of the best, one of the most distinctive. one of the most impressive insert sets of 1991. But the top three, to me, these are very comfortably in the top three, starting at number 3 with the Upper Deck Heroes set. And the Football Heroes set specifically with Joe Montana. Now, the Heroes was done in almost all of Upper Deck's releases in 1991, and they look different in different sets, but the Joe Montana cards, I think, look distinctly great. The Joe Namath, I think, looks distinctly not great. Part of it is the fairly monochromatic images, and part of it is the boring images. But with the Joe Montana cards, not only are the images looking good, but the whole design of the card, the whole theme of the card fits perfectly with them. It is an orange to brown fade with red detailing. It looks like it's a San Francisco 49ers card. I don't know why they used the same thing for Joe Namath. It doesn't make any sense. But for Joe Montana, this just, it looks like the whole card was built around the concept of showing off Joe Montana, which actually fits because this kicked it off for football. This was the first one. This was the model. I think it looks great. I really do love it. But for number 2, this is one that really surprised me that it ended up here on the list because I never really think about this card, which is the Fleer Pro Vision cards. And this is a small card set that there's not really much of a reason to get excited about it, except for Pro Vision, it carries across so well. This is definitely not the only Pro Vision card they did. This is just the one they did for football. But with the same champagne color around the outside, it does a beautiful job of showcasing the really good art inside, and the color of the whole thing and the visual texture of that champagne effect with all the elements down at the bottom. This carries the whole concept of Pro Vision across to a level of success that you didn't see anywhere else. I love the way it comes across. And it looks like it's probably the most professional, cleanest cut looking insert of all of football. So I definitely want to have it here at number 2. But for number 1, I've got to go with the true heir to the 1990 Fleer All-Pro, which is 91 Ultra All-Star. This is almost the same card except done significantly better. It's still got the shield with the player in it. It's got a cutout down at the bottom, but it's got 2. But here you have a gold to white fade, and the speckly quality of the gold really carries beautifully. The balance of everything on the card is great. And then down at the bottom you have the football field green that perfectly counterbalances it. To me, this shows exactly what Fleer is capable of doing. And Fleer would be putting most of their emphasis into inserts, which they already kind of had been. This is one of the true gold standards for Fleer card design. I just love the way these cards come across. But that is number 1. So for me, that is the whole ranking of all of the distinct insert cards for football in 1991. I'll be looking at baseball and then basketball and hockey and then doing worst of and best of ranking. I'm going to be doing all of that. But for football, this is where I put everything. So, definitely let me know what you think of the ranking, where you would put things, what insert set really kind of captured you. Let me know your perspective on it. Definitely subscribe if you haven't done so already and check out my other videos. And thank you very much for watching.